Hey friends, Jill here. Welcome back to Whispering Willow Farm. As you can see, I am out in my tunnel today. It is a glorious day. It's in the 60s here. 60s in December. I mean, only in Arkansas, right? And so we're out in the tunnel today. I've been harvesting a lot of cabbages, and as I've got things coming out, I'm trying to replace them because I do want to be growing food year-round in the tunnel, which is one of the lovely things about having a high tunnel is the season extension, which is the main reason why we have one, is because we were able to have all this food cranking out in here when we don't have as much food growing out in the raised bed garden. Granted, we do have a lot of food growing in a raised bed garden, but there's kind of the liberty to play around and still be direct seeding things in here that I'm not actually able to grow outside. For me, there are so many pros to having a tunnel. One, it's awesome. You can do a lot of high yield food production in a tunnel, but then the season extension, which is probably the main reason that people invest in a high tunnel, it's well worth it. There are things that I'm able to direct seed in here that I couldn't direct seed out in the raised bed garden, which is really nice. So today, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be direct seeding things like radish, carrots, a lot of different spinach and lettuce varieties, and so I just really like that. I like knowing I can come out here in December, January, February and just be direct seeding things, and I'm able to still just like be growing things when things have kind of halted out in the raised bed garden, because our winters here usually become the harshest in January, February, and the fact that I'm going to be able to be growing food in here is just really kind of a lifesaver. So today I'm going to show you guys what different varieties of spinach that I'm growing, why I'm growing those, talking about each of those varieties a little, and then we're just going to actually plant and do things. So we're going to be growing several different varieties of spinach this winter in the tunnel just to figure out what we enjoy growing. Now in the past, I've only ever grown Bloomsdale. It's a really good spinach, and typically if we're buying spinach starts here locally, that is all that is available to us. But Johnny's has some really great selection of spinaches, and so we're just going to be growing several different ones. We can pack them pretty tight. Like I'm going to be spacing these like 2 inches apart, so we can cram them in, do lots of different rows, because more than likely we're going to be cutting these as like babies. We're not going to let them get super like big mature leaf. We will just be harvesting them as baby spinach. Same with our arugula and our lettuces. We'll be harvesting them as like baby greens. That way they'll just keep coming back. And so the varieties that I'm going to try today are the hybrid smooth leaf red tabby F1. I'll put a description of these down below, so if you guys want to go check them out. I am going to be growing the Bloomsdale, and then I've got the Equinox, and it's a Savoy spinach. One thing I'll mention too, you'll notice, especially if you're shopping from Johnny's, there's going to be, so it says hybrid smooth leaf spinach, and then the variety, which is red tabby F1, or Savoy spinach, and it's the Equinox OG. The Savoy means like the crinkled leaves, and then the smooth is obviously a smooth leaf spinach. So when you see that, know that that's what that is. I know that there was like many years I didn't know that. I was like, why does one say this? Why does one say that? And when I realized that it's just the type of leaves that they are, so you can see here, I've got these crinkled leaves. That would be the Savoy. And it's just a personal preference. I know a lot of people like to use the Savoy if they're mixing it with some sort of like salad greens mix, because it adds some texture. I think this will be the first year. So this will be the first year that I'm growing the smooth spinach and the Savoy spinach to kind of get an idea of which one we like best. And so that's what I'm going to be growing. I've got some specialty salad greens, the Claytonia variety, and then we have some Napoli carrots, which I've got my carrots out in the raised bed looking great, but there's just not enough of them. And so I'm going to do things right this time. You guys know I've kind of struggled with carrots in the past, and so I'm going to try and give it another go. And I'm able to. I have the space in the tunnel. You guys can see behind me, I've got this whole space that's been cleaned out, and that is where we are going to direct seed these things. Another thing I wanted to talk about though, because this is a question that I get asked often. There's a difference. There's a difference when you say that you are growing something to harvest in the winter and you're growing something to be overwintered. And so I wanted to hit on that real quick. So the flowers that we have behind us, we planted late summer. We planted late summer, early fall, I guess, but they will be overwintered, meaning that they will grow, meaning that they will become, pretty dormant in the winter, but then they'll kind of kick back into high gear in the spring and start producing and blooming. So that is what I mean when I say overwintered. So we overwintered these flowers, meaning we planted them late summer, they go dormant, then they come back alive. things that we're growing that we're going to be harvesting in the winter would be something like a winter harvest. So like, I mean, even our brassicas, we sowed our brassicas end of summer. We will be harvesting them in the winter. Same with all of our root vegetables. You know, just be mindful of that these root vegetables, we could grow our carrots and just let them overwinter and harvest them in the spring. These spinaches, we could be growing them in successions, which we will continue to do. Spinach, it's like, I don't know, mid 30s to mid 40 days seed to harvest. So I can be harvesting them dead of winter. But then if I'm continuously staying on a succession planting, then I'll be harvesting them into the spring as well. We do not grow spinach around here in the summertime. It prefers really cold soil, and it really doesn't even do well if it's like mid 70s or higher. And so for us, we don't really have typical springs where it's still really cold. I mean, our springs are like summer, our winters are like fall, you know, and so for here, it's the easiest and best time for me to grow them in my zone 7B in the dead of winter. I mean, we're like approaching December, and this is when I'm planting them because this is when the spinach is going to thrive. It likes cool soil. It likes well-drained, fertile soil. So that is something to be mindful of. If you've grown spinach in the past and you've had a really hard time, or maybe you've just had sporadic germination or no germination at all, or you had your plants that just bolted and didn't produce any leaves, maybe you were just growing it the wrong time of year. So maybe try growing it in the fall and the winter instead of the spring and the summer if you have really hot springs. And so these are just some things that I've had to learn and figure out as I've grown spinach over the last few years. My spinach did really good in my green stock. So that's typically a place where I grow them a lot. But then we've had the space in the raised beds in the tunnel. So that's where I'm going to do them right now. So let's get started. It is kind of getting bright in the tunnel, and I do apologize. I am actually using plant markers for these. Usually out in the tunnel, I'm kind of hit and miss. I'm really not, but since we are growing these out to see which varieties we like the best, it is really important that I am putting the variety on here. And so I've got these just kind of marked with my seed packets, and I have them kind of laid out here. That way I can just go through and start doing it. I am going to be just kind of digging a trench. You really do not want to plant these super deep. And like I said, I'm going to be planting these about 2 inches apart. So I'm going to put a lot in here. I'm going to crowd it because we're going to be harvesting them as baby spinaches. So I don't need to give them more space. But if you were wanting these to get big and established and have those big, you know, long, thick leaves, then maybe I would give it a bit more space. But for what I need, that's what I'm going to do. I usually just go through and try to break up the top soil, the top layer of soil if it's a little bit compacted a little bit, which is what you'll see that I'm doing right here. I am going to plant my rows, honestly, probably like 10 to 12 inches apart. Now this will vary from what you see on the seed packet as well. And so I think the seed packet, reading the back of the seed packet is good in most cases. However, it's not something you have to be married to. You're going to have to figure out what's going to work best for you. And so that's what I'm doing. I know that the seed packet, I don't even know what the seed packet says. So the seed packet says sow these in rows of 18 inches apart, and I'm doing 10 to 12. So that's obviously different, and that's okay because I'm catering to my needs, not the seed packet's needs, which is kind of generic for a whole bunch of different people. And so that is something to tell you too. Don't be married to what the seed packet says. Know that there is some flexibility and some leeway in that. So without further ado, let's get started. quite a bit more direct seeding to do. I wanted to bring you guys along here and kind of talk about really just the benefit of having a tunnel this season extension, not only if you're wanting to overwinter things to be able to harvest first thing in the spring, but if you're wanting to actually grow things in the winter to harvest in the winter, which is what I'm going to be doing with that baby spinach. And I'm real excited. I don't know that we even grew spinach last year. I think I might have taken a year off, and so spinach is one of those things I'm buying every single week. So it'll be nice to just come right out in my backyard and be able to harvest some from the tunnel. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I'll talk to you soon.